Uh, Thank you and good morning, and thank you for having me. Happy Easter. I was trying to get the yard mowed before the rain came, and the rain just started. So this is great timing. It's great to be with you. Thank you all for making the choice to be here this morning. As I go through my remarks, I could get emotional. The thing I've already gotten emotional about is just imagining where our society could be right now if every public servant would just adopt the four-way test and the motto of service above self. It's really unimaginable. And I would like for that to be spread to world leaders also, obviously. I'll not be getting political for two main reasons. It violates the spirit of Rotary International. And secondly, the blood that runs through me is Quaker. And one of the spices of the Quaker religion is to be fair and just. And what that means to your Rotary Club in the context of my role as the keeper of your public purse is that there's no Democrat, Republican, or independent money at the treasurer's office. There's no black, white, brown money at the treasurer's office. There's no male, female money at the treasurer's office. It's all green. And what that means is that we don't pick and choose which laws to apply or who to apply them to. We treat everybody fairly. Lastly, I'll be getting highly mathematical. So if math makes you nauseous, you probably should get credit for the meeting and zoom out now. But so let's get started. Thank you for that. Thank you for that introduction. We're going to start with the AAA bond rating. Now, hopefully none of you wake up thinking about AAA bond ratings. You may wake up thinking about your personal credit score or the sanitation grade of the restaurant that you may go to this weekend. A bond rating to me is the same as a credit score is to you or a sanitation grade is to a restaurant. It's a sign of quality. And when we have a AAA bond rating, what that means is that when we have to borrow money for public education, public safety, public works, or public roads, we're able to do that at the lowest possible interest rates. The great news that I'm going to report to you this morning, and my remarks will be a little bit like a country music song. So I'm going to kind of build you up a little bit, then burn you down, then I'll build you up at the end. The great news to report this morning is that one of my 21 duties and responsibilities as the state treasurer and the keeper of your public purse is I chair the Debt Affordability Advisory Committee, otherwise known as the DAC. We just certified our report, and this is it, which you can't really see, other than to notice that it is now in the oven, and it's certifiable that the state debt over 8 years is going to fall by over 65%. The state debt. Now, I don't know what your backgrounds are. I don't know how old you all are, but I think that most of us would be hard pressed to ever think of any government agency at the local or the state, or especially the national level, where the debt is actually fallen. And so I'm very pleased to report that the state debt is going to be falling 65% over 8 years. And 5 of those years are already in the rearview mirror. I've already refinanced, pre-refunded, pre-announced that I'm going to pay off the debt for the next 3 years. So all this is in the oven, and that's great news. Why should you care about that? Well, the reason you should care about that in the AAA bond rating, for example, is we just issued some bonds to, for example, widen the highway between the 85-40 split, which I think many of you are interested in, and where it's 6 lanes and it goes down to 4 lanes. The second reason that should matter to you is that when businesses are thinking about coming to North Carolina or expanding in North Carolina, the certainty of knowing that they're not going to be coming to a state that is financially insolvent is a very big I check off on their box. Now, the the AAA bond rating is built on the state pension plan, which now has $120 billion. Now, my wife always talks about when I use billions and millions to sort of put it in context. $120 billion is nearly 5 times the size of the state budget of North Carolina. And just the pension plan by itself is the 126th largest pool of public money in the world. And it only represents half of what we do at the Treasurer's Office. We're managing about $245 billion when you add it all together. And so if you want to know why I talk the way that I do and say the things that I say, is because this is serious business. When we manage a department that financially is 10 times larger than the whole state budget, especially when we have the responsibility for the pension and health care for nearly 1 out of 10 adult North Carolinians, you can see why this is serious business. Very quickly on the pension plan, we just got scored in the 0 percentile. Now, what that means to you is that our pension plan was just scored as being the most efficient pension plan in the world. And this is the same benchmarking group that the previous treasurer used. So we're very proud of that. That happened by my partnership with those in the investment management division at the Treasurer's Office, who I stand on the shoulders of, them and all the other state employees when I report this news to you, to say that we've been able to cut $550 million out of Wall Street fees, out of the treasurers, out of the investment fees. And so we're very proud of that. You may have read recently that I have asked the General Assembly of North Carolina, which they have done, to pass a resolution, which they did unanimously, to send to the Congress of the United States, directing Congress to adjust a law that's been on the books for 50 years that would allow us to build a small exit ramp to a very long runway to sue President Putin for his murderous activities, the invasion of Ukraine, and the financial impact on the state pension plan of those that teach, protect, and serve, and taxpayers like them. We watched the pennies and the paper clips, and we've had about $80 million worth of direct investment losses associated with this Putin's murderous activities. Most of that is associated with a BlackRock International Index Fund. Those of you who are very familiar with index funds know that the state treasurer does not determine what's in an index, nor do you. The custodian or the underwriter of that index determines what's in the S&P, what's in the Russell, and of course, what's in the International BlackRock Index Fund. This index fund for decades has had investments in Russian oil companies, and that's where the investment losses stem from. So we all know what we're seeing in Ukraine. We all know how we feel about what we're seeing. You know, the Bible says that when we're faced with uncertainty and anxiety, our only choice is to give more. And what I'm trying to do is protect those that teach, protect, and serve, and the taxpayers like them because of these activities. Once again, a very tiny exit ramp to a very long runway where I'll be surrounding myself with subject matter experts who have a track record of prosecuting terrorists. Our 401 and 457 plans, which are sometimes referred to as our defined contribution plans, they have nearly $15 billion in them. And they also just got scored as being the most efficient. So we continue to watch the pennies and the paper clips and lower the fees on both of these plans. And the reason that's important is that any dollar that's inefficiently spent on any expense period is a dollar that can never be spent for benefits for our retirees and active employees. So that's a little bit of the good news. I'll talk a little bit about healthcare, which I think you've heard me talk about in the past. When I attempted to find out what healthcare cost in North Carolina, as the largest purchaser of healthcare in the state, this is what UNC Healthcare returned to me as the price list. Let me show you that again. Every page was redacted. You may have read or heard me refer to healthcare in North Carolina as a cartel. That's an extremely strong word. But if you go to the Webster's Dictionary, cartel is defined as an association which are formed to restrict competition and raise prices. Healthcare now owns North Carolina, and Wall Street is owning healthcare. The cartelization of healthcare over the last 4 years is the likes of which I don't think any state has ever seen. The concentration and the consolidation of power into the hands of these multi-billion-dollar corporations who disguise themselves as nonprofits run by these multi-million-dollar executives. This is what is happening with the cartelization of healthcare. Why do I use that term? Because the cartel controls the supply of healthcare through something called a certificate of need. If you take the first letter of those 3 words, it spells and it is pronounced a con. It's a con on the people of this state. They control the supply of healthcare. They control the quality of healthcare. They control the access to healthcare. They control the price of healthcare. And if you don't pay your bill, they have the ability to weaponize your credit score by controlling whether they put you in default or not. So I hope this comes across as clearly as I mean for it to. As the state treasurer of North Carolina, I want to tell you that because of a procedure that I had last fall, I have put myself in collections. Why would the state treasurer of North Carolina put himself in collections? The reason is, until you stand in the shoes of the people of this state who are being weaponized by phone calls, by text messages, and by bill collectors on a product called healthcare that they didn't want to consume because that would mean they were healthy, then I wanted to see exactly what that feels like. This is the result of me going in and getting a MRI with contrast last fall. It cost $6,000. I was there for 8 minutes. I paid $500 on this bill, point of sale, and then it ran through the state health plan insurance, and then I did not pay another penny on the bill because I want to see how the average people of this state are actually treated when they get weaponized by bill collectors and their credit score gets destroyed. Now, I'll close my remarks on this by saying a couple of things. These credit scores are different than when I was growing up in the 60s and 70s. Credit scores determine what you pay for your cell phone, what you pay for the basic liability insurance on your car that gets you to and from work, determines whether you get the benefit of the doubt in renting an apartment, and obviously determines what the interest rate is that you would pay if you want to have the joy of achievement and build equity in your life by buying a home. Credit scores are being weaponized by medical billing. Now, if you go to our website at nctreasurer.com, you'll see that a recent report came out of Johns Hopkins University, and this is the report. What this report shows that these multi-billion-dollar corporations who are disguising themselves as nonprofits are getting nearly $2 billion of tax benefit in this state and only offering a few $100 million of charity care. Now, why should your Rotary Club care about this? Because you care about public education, public safety, public health, and public roads. It's the income tax the sales tax, and the property tax are the three main taxes that fund the things that your Rotary Club cares about. But it gets worse. Rice University came in a month or two later after the Johns Hopkins report and did a peer review and showed that there's nearly $175 million worth of individuals in North Carolina who should have gotten charity care but didn't. So now their credit scores are being weaponized on a product they didn't want to consume called healthcare when they should have received charity care to start with. But it gets even worse. So this is a brochure that I'm showing you. Some of the major hospitals in North Carolina are encouraging some of these folks that should have gotten charity care to take out an Access One credit card. They want you to take out a credit card to pay your medical bill. And they seduce you into that by talking about a zero interest rate. I'm getting ready to apply for one of these credit cards because I want to see exactly what all that fine print says inside these credit card applications. The last thing a person in this state needs, especially the lower and fixed income individuals of our state, is to A, have their credit scores weaponized, and B, to take out a credit card that's going to end up going to a very high interest rate over some period of time. So I say all that to you and want to make sure that I'm clear that a little over 2 years ago, I was one of the early contractors of COVID. My wife sometimes accuses me of talking as if I'm a doctor. My initials are Dr. Folwell. That's about as close as I'm ever going to get to being a doctor. But I do know, as some of you know, that when your blood ox level is 82, while you're consuming 8 liters of oxygen in intensive care with no headache, no temperature, no shortness of breath, and no GI issues, you know you're sick. So when I talk about the cartelization of healthcare, I'm not talking about the people who saved my life and who may save yours. I'm not talking about the workers in the healthcare industry. So with that, I need to build you back up before I take questions and tell you that one of the valuable reasons for you being a member of this presentation this morning is I want all of you to go to nccash.com. There's nearly $1 billion sitting at nccash.com. There are 62 Rotary clubs in North Carolina that have money sitting at the treasurer's office at nccash.com. We are smashing all records, paying out over $100 million in money out of nccash.com this year, fiscal year. And I would invite you to go there, check your name, maiden name, kids' names, parents' names, church name, nonprofit name, business name. You will be shocked at what you will find. I give out check presentation. I make check presentations all the time. 3 Mondays ago, I presented $1,000 to the International Civil Rights Museum in Greensboro. How does this happen? They were going to be buying a new phone system. They decided not to buy the phone system. They made a deposit on a phone system. And then the International Civil Rights Museum changed its P.O. box. So when the check got sent back to them, it got returned in the mail, and then it got sent to the treasurer's office. So that's how this happens. Orange County has money at NC Cash. Durham County has money at NC Cash. The city of Durham has money at NC Cash. The school systems. But mainly it's made up of folks like you who somehow or another, through a rent deposit, overpaying a tuition, if that's even possible these days, a small bank account somebody may have opened for you as a child. Most of the entries at nccash.com are for individuals like yourself. So I bet you'll get addicted to it if you go, because there's no charge to look it up and no charge to get what's owed you. So with that, I'll take any questions that you might have in the time allowed.
Thank you, Honorable Treasurer Folwell. And